All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Comp 2160, Programming Practices. It has been such a long time since I've seen you all, and I'm so happy to see you all again. I am feeling pretty good today. I hope you're all feeling pretty good, too. I'm feeling good because, again, the wind was really, really challenging to get here on my bike today. But that means that the wind is going to push me home. Unfortunately, that means also that it doesn't mean anything. It means it is raining outside. It's raining outside, and that does not make for a fun bike ride, because even though the wind is pushing me, I'm going to go slow because I don't want to slip off my bike. And I fall off my bike an embarrassing number of times for an adult. It's a thing. The other thing that I'm grateful for today is my stupid cat. I am grateful for my stupid cat. The power went out at my house last night at about, it was like reported initially to Manitoba Hydro at about 4 a.m. And in my house, we're old people, and so we use standard alarm clocks. We don't put alarms on our phones. And so when the power goes out, maybe you don't know this. Maybe you don't know this. When the power goes out and your standard alarm clock is plugged into the wall, the alarm doesn't go off. But in my house, we have a little living alarm clock, and his name is Walter, and his fur is black, and he's very annoying sometimes. He's super, super persistent when it's time to get fed breakfast in the morning. And this morning, he was being especially annoying because he is like feverishly trying to get under the covers with me. And I don't know if you've ever had a cat crawl under the covers with you, but a cat that bites you sometimes is not a comfortable feeling to have that cat go in there. And so he woke me up at about 5:40 this morning, and I would normally be really, really annoyed by that because it's 5:40 a.m. in the morning, and he's like, hey, feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me, and I don't even feed him. I was grateful today because the power went out, and it woke me up in time. Yeah, okay. So that's what I'm grateful for today. Yeah. What kind of cat? It's a Humane Society cat, so it's kind of a mutt. But his fur is all black. Except, kind of like me, he's getting little gray hairs all over his body because he's getting a little bit older. So again, welcome back to Comp 2160. As with yesterday, we're going to start by taking a look at the learning outcomes for today's lecture. Again, these are going to be descriptions of what you should be able to do by the end of today's lecture. They're descriptions of what you should expect to be assessed on throughout the term. And as we're going through things today, you should hopefully be able to begin to see how you will be assessed on these things. But I will talk more about that kind of as we get closer to places where you will be assessed. So by the end of today's lecture, you should be able to find out how to run commands on the command line using the manual pages. So the key part to this is find out how. The manual pages, as we're going to see, are reference documentation for the commands that you can use on the command line. This is generally the way that you're going to ask questions about how do I do this thing, or if I know the name of a command, what things can I do to change the way that it behaves? I want you to be able to build and execute programs from a command line environment. So we're going to keep working on this high-level learning outcome. I want you to be able to connect to a Unix server with SSH. We did this a little bit yesterday. I will revisit it again because I want to be thorough about this. And I want to bring this back up just in terms of if you're having any trouble with passwords. I want you to be able to choose a text editor today. Yesterday, I showed you VI very briefly, very, very briefly, but I'd like to spend a little bit more time taking a look at VI and then really comparing it to Visual Studio Code, very specifically comparing it to Visual Studio Code to help you make an informed choice about what kind of a text editor you're going to use for this course. I want you to be able to execute commands on the Unix command line. We're going to be looking at this today from the perspective of navigating around the file system. So on Mac OS, you have Finder. On Windows, you have Explorer, File Explorer. We're going to be taking a look at how to navigate files and folder structures with the command line on Unix on the command line. I want you also now to start being able to write code that takes advantage of its environment through redirecting of standard input and output for file I/O. There's a lot in that statement. There's a lot in that statement. Today, we are not going to be writing code. We're not going to be writing code that does this. What I want you to be able to do is explain the concepts of standard input and standard outputs and give examples of each of those things. You may have seen some of this already in Comp 1020 in terms of printing things and reading things, getting input and output, but we're going to formalize what those things are called specifically on the command line. And I want you to be able to choose and use redirection operators and pipes. Redirection operators and pipes are tools that we're using on the command line in a command line environment to change the way that input and output works for a specific command. And so we're going to take a look at examples of that, and the activity that I'm going to ask you today is to be making decisions about which one is the right one for a specific example. So first and foremost, connecting to Avary. So just by a quick show of hands, how many people were able to connect to Avary yesterday or today? Okay, good. Lots of people are able to. That's positive. If you're having problems connecting to Avary, so you're typing SSH, lowercase, your UMnet ID at avary.cs.umanitoba.ca, and it asks for your password 3 times, and you type it in, and you think that it's the correct password, what that usually means is that it's not been entered correctly. And that maybe is just, I'm terrible at typing, by the way. I'm super terrible at typing, and I have a password manager, and I have a really long password, and the number of times I have to re-enter my password is another embarrassing thing about me, because I've got terrible typing skills. So I can't fault anyone for having also terrible typing skills, but if you have been misentering it, or if it has been already configured and you just don't know that it's already been configured, no fault of your own, please email this email address. So this is cs-support@lists.umanitoba.ca, and then politely ask them to reset your password. They will reset your password to that uppercase C, lowercase s, number sign, and then your student ID back to the default, and then you should hopefully be able to get connected to Avary. We're going to be doing some stuff on the command line today, and like I said yesterday, I'd like you to be able to follow along with the stuff that we're doing. So if you have the ability to log into Avary, take the time to do that right now. If you can't log into Avary and you still have a system in front of you, a laptop, please take the time in the next minute or two to try and get the Windows subsystem for Linux set up or the Xcode command line utilities installed to be able to follow along with what we're doing. Before I keep trucking along here, one announcement is that our first assignment, I will post it tomorrow, and I will discuss it in class tomorrow so that we can all get a sense of what's expected for the assignment. And a quick shout out to Connor on our discussion forum here. Take a look at the discussion forum. This is a notification. Take a look at the discussion forum. Connor posted that email address, but I thought I'd bring it up for everybody to take a look at. So thanks, Connor, for sharing that. Any questions about anything? Okay, awesome. Okay, so I'm going to start entering some commands on my command line. To begin with, I'm going to do this on my laptop. So I have Linux running on my laptop. I'm going to do these commands on my laptop, but the commands that I'm entering are the same kinds of commands that you could be using on Avary. The purpose of me starting on my laptop is that I also want to show you how to transfer files to Avary. I want you to be able to send stuff to Avary so that it's on Avary. And to be able to do that, I kind of need to start with something. This is a list of commands that I'm going to step through, some minimal representation of them. This is for your reference. I'm not going to go through these slides points one by one, but I'm going to cover each of these in the example that I'm doing. As I'm going through this, again, please try to follow along with the machine that you've got in front of you, just to give your fingers minimally the feel for how to type these kinds of commands on your terminal. So I'm going to pop open my terminal here, and my terminal prompt probably looks just a little bit different than yours. So when you log into Avary, you are using a program called a shell. So you connect to Avary, and you do see a cursor that looks kind of like that. It might be blinking, it might be an underline, it might be just a single pipe, but there's something there, excuse me, that's indicating I'm waiting for input right now. This is a program that's running that's called the shell. The shell that's running on Avary is called TCSH. It's the TC shell. If you're using Mac OS, the shell program that's running in your terminal is called ZSH or Z shell, but I'm a Canadian, so I call it Z shell. The shell that I am using on my machine is called Fish. This is the friendly interactive shell. I like it a lot better than using ZSH. I like it a lot better than using TCSH, and I like it a lot better than using Bash, which is what you might have on Windows Subsystem for Linux. Everything I'm going to do here still just directly applies to Bash, TCSH, and ZSH. So everything we're doing kind of fits in common. So the very first thing that I want to do once I've got this terminal up and running is similar to Explorer or Finder. I want to be able to see what's there. The way that we can list the contents of a directory, so I'm specifically using this word list. The way that we list the contents of a directory is to use this command ls, lowercase l, lowercase s. ls will print out all of the things that happen to be in this directory. So this is a listing of files and folders that I currently have in this directory. I'm going to start by making a new directory. So one of the things that you're probably going to want to do on Avary and or on your own machine is create a directory to keep stuff that's related to this course. So I'm going to make a new folder. And the way that I make a new folder or directory is using the mkdir command. This is makedir, make directory. I'm going to do makedir comp 2160 and press enter. And when I make dir comp 2160, I'm going to type ls. And then what we can see here is now there's a new thing that's been added here called comp 2160. In my shell, you can tell that they're folders because they have a different color than the other types of files that are there. You can also type ls-l. ls-l says, I want to change the behavior of how I'm printing out the contents of this directory. The -l part here says, I want to print the long output of ls. When I press enter here, I'm getting a lot more output, the long output for ls. The first block here, these are permissions for the file or permissions for the directory. Everyone here, you're probably the only user of your laptop. It's likely that nobody else uses your laptop. It's not universally true, but it's likely that nobody else is using your laptop. So permissions are kind of not as relevant as they are in other circumstances. Avary is a shared resource that all of you are using. All of you are using Avary. The permissions here are a way for an operating system to represent who can access files and folders and who is not allowed to access files and folders. I'm not going to get into too much detail about what each of these things mean, but the D here says this is a directory. This is my file synchronizing tool. It's a directory. It's a folder with a bunch of other stuff in it. The RWX here stands for read, write, and execute. Then there's a username and a group. This is, again, related to permissions. Most of the time that you're on your own laptop, you're the only person using it, so it's not not really as relevant, but when you're on Avary, that becomes important. And then things like metadata that includes the last time that this was modified or the time that this was created. So I've added a new directory. I use the makedir command to add a new directory. I want to be able to double-click on that file. I want to be able to double-click. So when we're using Explorer or when we're using Finder, we double-click on our folders to open them up so that we can take a look at them. The way that we double-click or open a folder is to change directory into that folder. Changing directory into that folder on the command line is cd, and then the name of the folder that you want to change into. When you're using the command line, the tab key is also helpful for finishing what you're starting to type. So I am, in addition to being very bad at typing, I'm also quite lazy and I just don't like to type all of the letters all of the time. I've typed in COM here. Fish has already kind of said, like, I can expand this for you. Bash, TC shell, and Z shell don't do that. They'll just print out what you've typed in already. But if you hit tab, it will finish the rest of that for you. That's a nice tip. Please use your tab key. Please use your tab key. So once you do that, I'm going to hit enter. My shell has changed just a little bit. It tells me now that I am in a directory called comp2160 here. I can also ask questions about where I am right now. So I'm going to ask, what's my present working directory? This is kind of like saying which window in Finder or Explorer is at the top right now. Which one am I currently looking at? Present working directory says that I'm in a folder that's called Home, fbristow, and then comp2160. On Avary, everything that appears before my username is going to be different. It's going to be something for you like Home CS undergrad, something like that. I don't remember exactly what it looks like, but it looks something like that. On a Mac, it's going to be /uppercase users / your username and then the directory that you've just changed into. On a Windows machine, if you're using WSL, it's going to look exactly like this. It's going to look identical to this. So I've changed into this directory. I'm going to list the contents. There's nothing in this directory. I just created it. So like right-click, new folder. I've got a new folder. I've opened it with Explorer. There's nothing there. Now I want to be able to start putting stuff into this directory. So I'm going to use a command to copy a file from somewhere. I'm going to copy a command, copy a file. I'm going to say CP. CP is copy. The names of these commands, they're micro-sized. They are micro-sized because these were formalized in 1977 when people were literally sitting in front of typewriters and like sending stuff over telephone wires. So minimizing typing was important in that time period. I'm going to copy a file, and I'm going to copy a file. I'm going to do this. I'm going to change back. So I'm going to close that window. I've popped one up. I'm going to close that window. I'm going to move back one directory. This is 2 periods right after each other. Change to the parent directory. I'm going to run a command that's called touch. I'm going to say touch file name. I'm going to say touch. Somebody shout out the name of a Pokemon, please. Charizard was the first one I could make out. Oh gosh, I'm going to touch a Charizard. Touch is a command that will create an empty file. So I'm going to touch Charizard, press enter. I'm going to do ls, and now we can see that there's a file here that's called Charizard. So I did touch. You can put whatever name you want here. You don't have to actually put Charizard here if you don't want to. Touch created a new file called Charizard. There's nothing in it. I want to be able to copy this file. So, okay, also, by the way, so I apologize if I'm interrupting myself, but I want to make sure that you know what I'm typing on my keyboard as I'm interacting with it. So I typed in touch Charizard, but I don't want to actually run the command. So I'm kind of saying cancel this current command by pressing Control and then C on my keyboard. So whatever's typed in there is just saying, nah, forget it. I don't want to actually do that. Let's just do something different. So I did touch Charizard. I created this file that's called Charizard. I'd like to copy it into the directory. So in Windows Explorer or Finder, you're right-clicking on the name of a file and you're selecting something like copy. And then you're opening that other directory and then right-clicking and selecting paste. We can do that all in one go here. I'm going to say copy Charizard, the name of the file that I want to copy, and then the destination of where I want to copy it to. So I want to copy it into this directory comp2160, and I'm hitting my tab key here again. That trailing slash is optional, but it's kind of a good idea to include it to help you make sure that you're actually putting this thing into a directory and not just copying it to another file name. When I copy a file, I can do it just like this. I'll hit Enter. And from my current directory here, which is my users directory, my home directory, I can type ls comp2160 and I press Tab. And now there's this file called Charizard in it. If I also type ls here, it's still in this directory. I've made a copy of that file. The other way that I can run copy is I can say copy Charizard, tab. I want to copy it into comp2160, but my favorite first-gen Pokemon is Blastoise. So I'm going to copy this to Blastoise. This is going to both copy the file and rename it in the new location. This is something you cannot do with macOS Finder or Windows Explorer. It's not, the only time you're ever given the option to do this is if you are like pasting into a directory that already has that file name. So if I do this, it's going to copy Charizard into that directory. I'm going to list comp2160. I'm going to press my tab key, press Enter. And now I've got two files that are in there. I'm going to change directory back into comp2160. I'm going to list the contents of this directory again. We knew what was there. If I want to rename a file, I can use the move command. Move is change the name or location or both of this file. So I'm going to say that I really don't like Charizard. So I'm going to move Charizard and I'm going to move it to Snorlax. That is my spirit Pokemon. This command, move, will take the first thing that we pass to it, and it will rename it. So when I press Enter here, and I list the contents of the directory again, now we've got Blastoise and Snorlax. Move is something that you can also do to do basically the cut and paste operation. So CP is copy and paste. We can also do cut and paste using the move command. So I can say, I'm going to make a new directory inside of comp2160, Pokemon, and I'm going to move. I'm going to move both Blastoise and Snorlax into the Pokemon directory. So move Blastoise, Snorlax. I'm hitting the tab key each time here into Pokemon. This is taking two files. We can have any number of files just next to this move command, and it's going to move them all into this directory. So if I list the contents here now, I have just a directory that's called Pokemon. Just a second. If I change into Pokemon, tab, and I list the contents here, now I've got Blastoise and Snorlax. Yes, you got a question.
So I guess the identifying thing for the move command has to not make a copy is the fact that there's a directory at the end of it.
Okay, good question. Thank you. So the question is basically, we can't, and I'm going to try to change it into my own words, and then you can confirm if I'm actually summarizing what you're asking. The question is, can we only move into a directory? Okay, so similar to copy, we can also do move Snorlax to Pikachu. This will just rename that file. So it doesn't make a copy of it, it doesn't duplicate it, it just changes it. When I omitted a file name here after this directory, it kind of just means cut and then paste into this directory. Here it means change the name of this file. And we could do this both at the same time. So we could move Blastoise to Pokemon/Squirtle, something like that. Yeah?
If you're moving directories into another directory, do you have to use the -r flag after each directory to move all the recursive files inside that directory?
Okay, that's a great question. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say I'm in the Pokemon directory right now. So the question is, do we have to use a special flag to move directories? And this actually also applies to copying directories. I'm in the Pokemon directory right now. I'm going to say make dir first gen. And I'm going to move Blastoise and Pikachu. So again, I'm hitting tab. And I'm going to move them into first gen. I'm going to now make another directory, second gen. And now I desperately need help because my experience with Pokemon ends in 1997, 1998. And then I forced my children to play Game Boy with me. Yeah, it's awesome. What's a second gen Pokemon? Cyndaquil with a so I'm going to say touch, second gen, CY, NDAQILL. Okay, so I've touched second gen Cyndaquil. I've created this file that's called second gen Cyndaquil. I'm going to say I mistakenly want to use numbers instead of the word first. I want to use 1ST. I want to use 2ND instead of second. I can rename directories. I can say first gen. I'm hitting tab again, and I can say 1ST gen. This will change the name of that. More specifically to your question about moving an entire directory into another directory, I can say move first gen to second gen, and move will just place that directory inside of it. So I've cut this and I've pasted it into this folder. So if I type ls now, there's nothing in there except for second gen. If I type ls second gen, so I'm hitting tab again, now there's a folder in there and a file that's called Cyndaquil. I'm going to move first gen back to this directory. So I'm going to say move second gen, I'm hitting tab, first gen, I'm hitting tab. The target that I want, so this is the source, the first argument here to move is called the source. The target is the second argument that I'm passing to it. I want to move it here. I want to move it right here. Right here is dots, just one dot. The parent directory is 2 dots, go up 1 level. Right here is just 1 dot. So when I say move second gen / first gen to dot, I'm saying I want it to be in this directory right here. The other half of your question is now about copying. So I want to right click on a folder and copy, and then I want to paste it somewhere else. That's where we have to add this -r flag. We have to change the behavior of what the copy command is doing. So if I wanted to copy first gen into second gen, I would have to say cp -r first gen, that's the thing that I want to copy, and then I want to place it inside of here. So the structure looks really similar to the way that I copied that file, but because this argument right here, the first argument, the source, is a directory, I have to copy it recursively. I would like my shell to go into this directory, and for everything that's underneath it, all the directories and files, I want to copy the whole structure over to this location. If you just do cp with no -r, your shell is going to tell you, no, I can't do that because it's a directory. A lot of times it will helpfully tell you you should put the -r option here. So I'm going to run a new command here. The command that I'm going to run is called find. Find is a program that will just go through every directory under this current directory and print out what file names and folders there are. So after I copied first gen into second gen, now we've got this first gen, Blastoise, Pikachu. We've got first gen, the original one that we had, Blastoise and Pikachu. I'd also like to be able to remove files. I want to delete them. To remove a file, I can change into a directory. So I want to delete this copy of first gen. I don't want that anymore. It doesn't really belong inside the second gen folder. So I'm going to change into second gen. To remove a file, we use the rm command. This is R and then M. The thing that we pass to it is the thing that we want to remove. So I'm going to hit 1 and then tab, and then I'm going to delete Blastoise first. B and then tab. When you have Finder open, when you have Explorer open, and you select a file and you press the delete key, it moves it to the recycle bin. And then you can say, oh crap, I didn't mean to delete that file, and go to your recycle bin and restore it. When I press enter here, that file is gone. Is gone. Is just gone. We cannot recover that file. We can't recover that file. You can really, really politely send an email to cssupport@lists.umanitoba.ca and ask them, hey, I accidentally deleted this file, and they might be able to help you. But most of the time, they can't help you. If you delete a file, it's gone on the command line. If you want to remove an entire directory, so I want to remove first gen, I'm going to hit 1 and then tab. If I just do RM, and this is similar to copy recursively, if I just do RM, it says this is a directory. It is trying to help me a little bit to make sure that I'm not just like blindly deleting entire directories of stuff. In this case, I do know that I want to do it. I can say RM recursively, please. So go into this directory and delete all the files recursively. On Avary, if you are deleting a file, it will ask you every time. And that's been configured that way because when you RM a file, it's gone. So it says, are you sure you want to delete this file? And when you're deleting a directory of stuff, it's going to ask you for every single file in that directory. And you're saying to yourself, I'm super sure I want to delete this directory. It's got nothing important in it. I know because I've checked several times. I've checked several times. So if I want to forcibly delete it, I can say -rf. This changes the behavior of RM once more. The first thing is R recursively. The next one is F here. F means force. Yes, I want to just delete this whole thing, and I don't want you to ask me every time I've got a file here. So if I do RM -rf, and I hit ls again, now I've just got that Cyndaquil Pokemon in there. Yeah.
So if you want to just be one file or a folder with no files, you can just use RM -f.
If you want to delete a folder that has no files in it, there's two options. You can use the rmdir command, but this will only delete it if there are no files in it. And this will tell you, if you try to use rmdir on a directory and there are files in it, it will say there are files in this directory and it won't do it for you. You can also, if you want to delete a directory with rm, you must do the -r. You have to have that -r there.
So it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter if it's empty or not, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. I don't know. So I'm going to ask the manual pages. So this is something we'll get to in a second. The question is there a dash uppercase I? And I'm really delighted to see that it's right there. If the dash I or interactive option is given, and there are more than 3 files, then RM prompts the user whether to proceed with the entire operation. Okay, thank you. I learned something today. Thank you for that. Yeah.
So you can call the manual on every single function?
Yeah, so any command that you want to enter, including man, you can run the manual pages on. Yeah. We'll talk more about the manual pages in a couple minutes. So when I am using the manual pages here, I'm hitting Q to quit at the bottom there. Yeah. Okay. All right. It depends on your shell. This is actually, the manual pages will always be there. The help command is something that, this is actually opening my web browser now because this is what fish does. The help command can appear in other places as well. Okay. So there's a couple more things that I want to do here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change back. So change directory up 1. So close the window that I'm in, go back to the place that I was before. I'm going to list the contents of this directory. I'm going to rename first gen back to first gen. I'm going to change into first gen. And I'm going to do something that we're going to get to like super soon here. I'm going to use a program that's called cat. I'm going to say cat and then greater than symbol, and I'm going to cat, and on the other side of the greater than symbol, I'm going to type, what else do we have in here? Pikachu. Cat is the name of a program. Cat is a program that will concatenate things together. This basically reads input and then just prints output again. That's all it does. Let me run it all by itself. I'm going to say cat. Thank you, Walter, for waking me up at 5:40 a.m. today. And if I hit enter here, it just prints it back out. That's all this command does. Reads input and just prints it back out again. I'm going to hit Control-C on my keyboard. Cat is waiting for me to type stuff in, so I'm going to hit Control-C on my keyboard, and that ends the cat program. I want to change the way that this is working. I'm going to say cat Pikachu, and what this says is cat is going to read stuff in on the command line. It's going to let me type stuff in, but when it prints output, I want to actually put the output into this file. So if I hit enter here, I'm going to start listing moves. Moves, 1, Thundershock. 2, Tackle. 3, Quick Attack. 4, Thunder. 5, no, Iron Tail is not first gen. Quick Attack I already did. So that's not first gen, is it? Is it? It is, it is. Seismic Toss, okay. And now I'm going to hit on my keyboard. I can either hit Control-C or Control-D. I'm going to hit Control C just to be consistent with what I've been doing so far. I'm going to do ls-l, so I want to list the long format of output here. This number here in between my username and the date says how many bytes are used by this file. When I did touch Blastoise, it created an empty file, 0 bytes. As I started typing stuff into cat, it's printing it out to the file called Pikachu, and now Pikachu has 76 bytes of data in it. One common way to view the contents of a file in Linux is to use a program that's called a pager. A pager is a program that will read one page or one screen of input at a time, and it will print it so that you can move around with it. The first pager was called more. More is a pager that would let you see one more screen at a time. More works by typing in more and then the name of the file. So I hit tab to expand this. And if I press enter here, it's going to print out some stuff, but because there's less than one page worth of things, more knows enough to just print it and then exit. A more modern pager, the main problem with more is that once you have multiple screenfuls of things and you move to the second page, you can't go back up again, and that's a pretty important thing to be able to do, wanting to go back up in the file that you're looking at. So someone came along and wrote a program called less. And the joke here is that less is more. Less is more. Yep, that's the joke. Less is more. That's an English idiom, and in an English idiom, less is more kind of means like things that have fewer features are maybe better than things that have more features because it's maybe easier to use, or I don't know, it makes the company more money. I don't know. I don't know why it's an English idiom, but less is more. Less is just another pager here, and it will print out the contents of what you got, and you can use your arrow keys to move up and down. You can press the space bar to move down. You can also get out of less with Q. So press Q on your keyboard to exit less. I'm going to very quickly go back to my web browser here and make sure that I've got everything. So manual pages, that's the one thing that I want to get to. I'm going to do this in just a second, but we've done all of these other commands. The other things that I want to do are tell you a little bit about special places. So special places that we've seen right now is dot. The current directory is dot. If I want to copy something to right here, I use one single dot. If I want to move something to here, I use one single dot. If I want to move something to the parent directory or copy to the parent directory, I use 2 dots. The other special place, the other landmark, this is Landmark, Manitoba. This is the high school in Landmark, Manitoba. I don't think I've ever been to Landmark, Manitoba. Should I go? Yeah, okay. Maybe I'll go to Landmark, Manitoba someday. This is Landmark Collegiate. The other special place in here, the other landmark, is your home directory. So I'm going to do 2 things. First, I'm going to change to my home directory. I'm going to say change directory. From anywhere that I am right now, I can type change directory to tilde. Tilde is the squiggle. Tilde is, if you have an English keyboard, it's the key that's like just below the escape key. And you have to hit shift to get it. So there's that backtick character and then a squiggly line. That's called a tilde or tilde. If I say change directory to tilde, tilde is my home directory. That will just take me back to this home F Bristow or home CS undergrad, your username. It will just always take you back there. Change directory dash is like the back button in your web browser. It says go back to where you were before, wherever it was. So this takes me back to the first gen folder. I can get to my home directory again by just typing CD and passing no arguments to it. Change directory with nothing just says go back to my home directory. This tilde you can use in place of folders. So I'm going to change directory back to first gen. So cd dash, hit the back button. What I want to do here is I want to copy Pikachu to my home directory. So I'm going to say copy Pikachu tab to my home directory. So just Pikachu and then tilde, and then I can say slash after that. And if I press enter, that says copy Pikachu to my home directory. So you can use that special symbol in place of directory names, or you can use it as a destination for changing directory to. All right, are we okay with this? Good. Okay. There's lots and lots more stuff about moving around the file system in the Introduction to Tools and Techniques textbook. There's a lot written there. There's also just lots online about doing this stuff. So if you're looking for extra reference material, please take a look at those, the links that are in the course resources page. The other thing that I want us to take a look at right now is the next thing I want to do, is text editors. I'd like to spend some time on text editors. No, I don't want to do text editors just yet. The last thing I want to do is find the manual pages. So we looked at this really briefly when we did man rm. The manual pages are a way for you to find information about how to run a command. You can, of course, just ask ChatGPT to tell you how to use a command. That's a perfectly reasonable way to approach using ChatGPT. Another good use for ChatGPT in this context is, how do I do this? What command do I use to do this? Search engines are really bad at answering that question, but ChatGPT is pretty good at answering this question. I have a thing I want to do. I can describe to you what I want to do. What command should I use to accomplish that task? And it can do a decent job at it. It's not perfect, but it does a better job than search engines. The manual pages, though, can help you when you know the name of the command that you want to find more information about. So one program that we tried using here was called find. I'm going to say man find. The manual pages generally look like this structure. And it's kind of similar to the documentation that you've been forced to put at the top of your Java programs. There's a brief description of the name of the command, so what it is and what it does. There's a synopsis section that says these are the things that this program has in terms of options that change its behavior. And then there's a longer description that says everything about what the program does. Everything in the description part kind of changes on the different commands that you're looking at, but the name and synopsis is usually kind of consistent across all the manual pages. There's an options section for the manual page for find, and then in the find manual pages, if I take a quick search through here, so right now, I've opened up the manual page for find. I can search for stuff by pressing the / on my keyboard. That's going to start searching for things. And what I want to search for is example. And I'm going to hit enter. This is starting to find the text example for me, and it's highlighting it. I want to go to the examples section. I want to keep going through the things that I found. So if I do Control F on my keyboard and if I keep hitting enter, it will take me to the next thing in my text editor. In the manual pages, I can hit N on my keyboard. So I'm hitting N on my keyboard and it keeps taking me to further places that have that same match. The manual page for find also has a bunch of examples of how to do fairly common operations that you might want to use this program for. The part that I want to highlight, though, is not just this example section. I kind of want to highlight the top part. So I'm going to go back to the top of the page here by pressing the lowercase g key on my keyboard. Lowercase g says go to the top of this thing. The parts that I want to talk about here are the way that we run the command and the options that are passed to it, but I don't even really want to talk about the command itself. This is an exercise left for the reader if you want to find out how to use the find command. I want to tell you more about what this kind of structure looks like here. So with find, what we've got is we have the command itself. So find is the name of the command. This is the name of the command. Typically what comes after the name of the command is a bunch of things that have square braces. So square braces like this, and then the first options in find were like -h, -d. What this says is that these are optional arguments. And these optional arguments are changing the behavior, usually. So things that have this dash prefix or dash dash is also common. This changes the behavior of what the command does. That's usually the format that you see in these manual pages. The last part that find had was a word that said expression. Here, what this is kind of saying is, and typically the last argument that you have here is going to be some kind of a file or folder. Most Linux and Unix commands will have this kind of structure. The name of the command, things that you tell it to change the behavior of what it's doing. So the ones that we've seen so far are things like copy, CP, and then when we add -r, it means recursively. We've got RM, and when we add -r, it means recursively. When we add F, or a -f, it says forcibly. The last thing that we've got in all of these commands is going to be the file or the folder that we want to operate on. So really, generally, our commands have this kind of structure. Most of what we've got here on find is optional. So when I ran it, I just ran find with no arguments, and it just printed out all of the files and folders that were in the current directory. Another command that you can use to do this, and this is just a total aside, another command that you can use to do this, so I'm going to get out of this by pressing Q. I'm going to change directory to my parent directory, and I'm going to run tree. Tree is a program that can also just print out all the files and folders that you have in the directory that you're in right now. Okay, real good? Okay, good. So let's take a look at text editors. So one of the things that I want you to be able to do is make a choice about the kinds of text editors that you're using. The two options that I would suggest are pretty good contenders for the text editors that you're choosing. The first one is Microsoft Visual Studio Code. One of the good, compelling features about this is that I'm guessing everyone already has it installed on their machine. Everyone already has it installed on a machine. Visual Studio Code is also just fairly easy to use. It's pretty easy to use. In terms of text editors, I'd say this is quite an easy to use text editor, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. The problem with Visual Studio Code is that it's kind of on your laptop. All the stuff that you're going to be submitting for assignments for this course, you have to send it to Avary. All the stuff that you're doing for assignments in this course has to work on Avary. And so if you're using Visual Studio Code on your laptop to test things on Avary, you're going to have to send it to Avary over and over and over again. That's going to get tedious. I put maybe here because what I suspect you're going to tell me is that there are plugins and extensions for Visual Studio Code that can help you with that. Yes, okay. I'm going to really politely suggest and ask, not specifically you, but anybody in this room, if you have suggestions on how to improve your workflow for Visual Studio Code, this would be an excellent place to put it. I am an old person, and I prefer to use Vim. And I'm going to tell a joke here that none of you will get or care about, but if you use Emacs, you're a bad person, and you should feel bad. Vim and Emacs are terminal text editors. We started using this last class. Vim and Emacs are hard to use. I'm just going to straight up say it. They are difficult to use programs. They are not obvious. They are challenging to use. They are challenging to get started with. They are challenging to exit. They are challenging to even leave the program once it's started. That's not a good way to introduce things to students. That's part of the reason why we don't say in Comp 1010 and 1020 or Comp 1012, let's start with Vim. That's why we say, let's use Visual Studio Code to do this. Maybe that's a good thing, but nah, it's probably just a bad thing. The main thing that I like about Vim and Emacs is that Vim and Emacs are everywhere. They are on every system. If you have installed the Windows subsystem for Linux, you have Vim on your system. If you have a Mac, you have VI on your system. If you're connected to Avary, you've got Vim and VI on those systems. If you, in the workforce, are starting up cloud services, VI is installed on that cloud service. VI is everywhere. It will be on every system that you are able to connect to and use. That's a good thing. Once you've got it, you're able to use it. Yeah?
You already work like your system, which like I can sudo apt install things like Neovim if I want.
So that's a good question. The question is, can I install things on Avary? And the answer is no, you cannot install things on Avary. It's a shared resource that everybody has access to. If you have a compelling case to install something on Avary, you can ask CS support at lists.umanitoba.ca. And assuming that it can be apt-get installed, they will often say yes, but not universally. Vim, so not NeoVim, but Vim itself, it's installed basically everywhere. You kind of got a choice now. The first task that you've got, this is actually like the nth task that I've asked you to do, but the nth thing that you have to do is to pick a text editor that you want to use for the course. It is entirely up to you to choose which one you want to use. I'm not going to force you to use anything. All the examples that I do are going to be in VI and Vim. That's just because that's the text editor that I use for the most part. You can pick anything that you want, and everyone's going to tell you you made the wrong decision. Most people are probably going to say it's fine that you picked VS Code, but I'm going to say that if you picked Vim, you've made the right decision. You've absolutely made the right decision. Can I borrow this for just a second? Thanks. So if you got here a little bit early today, I printed out some Vim cheat sheets. If you didn't get here early enough for me to print this out and you would like me to print one out for you, send me an email and I will print it and bring it tomorrow. I will also just put a link to this on the course webpage. This is a Vim cheat sheet. When I started learning to use Vim, I printed this out and I had it beside me all the time. When I started to use Vim, I printed this out and I had this beside me all the time. I didn't have it in a tab somewhere because I can just ignore tabs. I had it printed out and literally beside me on the table. A cheat sheet like this will tell you how to use Vim. It will tell you things like, and there's really important parts on here, like from the system clipboard. So when you try and copy and paste something from Visual Studio Code into Vim, you're going to very quickly find that it messes things up real bad. And so this cheat sheet has a little tip about how to configure Vim so that it allows you to copy and paste things into it from something like Visual Studio Code. If you don't have a copy of this and you would like a hard copy, I think it's perfectly fair if you don't have a printer at home, please just ask me. I have unlimited printing privileges, and I can use those printing privileges to print this out for you, and I would be very happy to do that. I would really recommend that if you want to try learning to use Vim, that you have a cheat sheet beside you while you're doing it. Eventually, you will stop looking at the cheat sheet, but to get started with it, just to help you remember things, I find that to be a pretty valuable thing to have to help out. So I'm going to try and convince you to use VI. And to do that, I want to use this opportunity to start editing a file. We did this last time, but I just want to do it again. I want to step through the process of using VI. And then what I'm going to do is transfer things to Avary. So I'm going back to my terminal here. And in my Pokemon directory, so I've got these two folders, I'm going to use VI to create a new file. I'm going to say VI hello Pokemon. It's going to be a C program, so it's going to be hello Pokemon.c. As I said before, the first couple lines of a C program are like the import lines in a Java program. They start with a number sign, include, and then in angle brackets, so greater than and less than and greater than, we put the names of the libraries that we want to use. I want to use two libraries, stdio.h, that's standard input and output, and I want to use stdlib.h, the standard library. In a C program, we've got to have that main function. So in Java, we've got a main method. In Python, we kind of just got nothing. It just starts reading at the top and working its way down. You can make something that looks like a main function by saying if, oh gosh, I forget, if underscore underscore program name equals something. It's a mess. It's a disaster. In C, it's still called main. It's a main function, but it's not attached to a class, so it's called a function. In Java, it's a void return type. In C, we have an integer for a return type, so int main. When I typed this in last time, I used the keyword void. I'm going to change that this time. What I'm going to say this time is int argc and char star star argv. In Java, okay, everyone say this out loud with me, please. Public, static, void, main, string, args. In Java, we say public, static, void, main, string, args. String is an array of strings. In C, we've got an integer that says this is how many arguments have been passed to this program. So we've been running a bunch of programs on the command line, and we're saying things like cp and then -r, and then the name of a folder, and then the name of another folder. Those are arguments to my program. CP is a program that's been written in C or some other language, but probably written in C. When I take that -r and then the name of the folder and then the name of the other folder, those are going to get stuffed into these arguments that are being passed. argc is, this is the number of arguments that have been passed to me, and char star star argv is an array of strings. I'll even change this just a little bit. There, now it looks a little bit more close to a Java program. In Java, we're saying system, everyone say this with me, please, system.out.println, semicolon. And that will print out a string, and it will put a new line at the end of it, so we start at the next line of output. In C, what we're doing is using a function called printf. For the record, there's also a method in Java that's called system.out.printf that does the same structure of things that we're going to do with printf eventually. but you probably haven't seen it. Have you seen it, anyone? Anyone? A couple people? Okay. It exists. We're not going to use it in this course, but it exists. So we're going to say print f, hello, Bulbasaur. Yeah, Bulbasaur. Bulbasaur has been ignored in the things that we've done. Hello, Bulbasaur. Printf does not have new lines at the end of it, so we must put the new line character. My main function has a return type, so I must return something. We can just say return 0. 0 says everything went just fine. A 0 return type says everything was good. 0 is kind of a magic number here. It's a value that doesn't necessarily have any meaning to us. So I'm going to change this to be return exit underscore success. Exit success is a constant variable here, so it's a value that's just going to be replaced here. It is 0, but I'm explicitly saying here I've exited successfully. So when I read this code later, I'm going to be able to see this is a successful way to end the program. Couple of things. If you don't have syntax highlighting on right now, you may not have syntax highlighting on right now. So when we start VI, we're in command mode. I enter insert mode by pressing I. I get out of insert mode by pressing escape. When I'm in command mode, I can enter commands to Vim or VI. If you don't have syntax highlighting on right now, you can enter a command by pressing the colon key on your keyboard and saying syntax on. Syntax on, I mean, I already had syntax highlighting on, but you should magically have colors if you didn't have colors before. I've got some other things that are configured here, like line numbers showing up. Vim is a highly configurable editor. If you want to learn how to do that, this is an exercise left for the reader, but syntax highlighting, I think, is a minimal feature that we need to have to write C programs. Okay. So we've got this. I'm going to write this out. I'm going to press colon and then W to save it. I'm going to open up a new terminal window. I am using something called a terminal multiplexer here. You can accomplish what I'm doing by just having two windows open. This is really easy to just have two terminal windows open side by side so that you can go and do things between them. This is a program that's called tmux, terminal multiplexer, and it lets me do things like have multiple panes within the same window. This is just, I find this easier to use, and so this is what I use. You're not required to use this. I'm just making sure that you know that this is what I'm doing when I'm doing it. tmux is installed on Avary. Fish is also installed on Avary, but you have to start it by typing fish if you want to use fish. I'm going to change directory into my Pokemon directory. Oh, sorry, it was comp2160, tab, Pokemon, tab, ls, there's hellopokemon.c. I want to be able to compile this program. Last time I used a command called make to do that. Today I'm going to do what I'm expecting you to do when you're compiling C programs. I'm going to start by typing in clang, C-lang. Clang is the name of a C compiler. If you're running the Windows subsystem for Linux, this may not be installed by default. So if you type in clang and you press enter on your keyboard, if it says this, you are good to go. If it says you should type in sudo apt install, apt get install, and then some stuff after that, these are package names, copy that and paste it and install those packages so that you have the clang program. This is installed on Avary already. If you've installed the Xcode utilities on your Mac, you have this installed and you should be good to go. I'm going to say Clang. I'm going to say -W all. I'm passing an option to Clang that says I would like to enable warnings. So when you're doing Java, you may have seen something that's got like a yellow underline. It's not an error, but it's a warning. It says maybe this thing is not safe to be using. Maybe you should not do this anymore. I'm going to upgrade this later, so you shouldn't rely on it, that sort of thing. W here says turn on warnings. The all part of this says I would like all warnings to be enabled. There are many kinds of warnings that our C compiler can find. We will see a bunch of them, but this will help make sure that we're getting something that has no warnings, or it will print out the warnings for us. I'm going to say Clang W all. The next thing that I put is the name of the program that I want to compile. So hello, and I'm going to hit tab on my keyboard here, hello Pokemon.c. The last option that I want to pass to Clang is -O. And this says, this is the name of the file that I would like you to create when I've done this. So I'm going to say hello-Pokemon. No extension. So the .c is there, showing up because of my shell. I don't want an extension, so I'm not actually typing .c there. I'm going to quickly do this so we can see what that command looks like all by itself. I'm going to hit enter on my keyboard. We're going to type ls. And now we've got hello Pokemon.c and then the program hello Pokemon. I'm going to hit // on my keyboard, HE, and I'm going to hit tab. And I'm going to hit enter, and we've got a working C program. This is something we're going to see a lot. I'm going to type this in repeatedly over and over and over again as we're going through and compiling C programs. And now we've got a hello world that we've written using Vim, maybe, but maybe we're doing this with VS Code, and that's totally fine. That's totally fine. I would encourage you to try using Vim. I would encourage you not to try using Vim 24 hours before the assignment is due. Stick with VS Code, okay? The last thing that I want to do is I want to copy all of this to Avary. This is the last thing I'm going to do today. So I'm going to change directory back to my parent. So now I'm in that comp2160 directory. I want to copy the entire Pokemon folder to Avary. The way that I can do this on the command line, I'm going to quit Vim here, so :Q. This is just Q with no W. So this is don't save it, just exit Vim, but I've already saved it, so it's fine. It will warn me if I don't. I'm going to exit this shell, and I'm going to hit Control-D on my keyboard, and that will just exit that shell. I would like to copy the entire Pokemon directory. When we copy things, we were using that cp-r when I wanted to copy an entire directory. There's a program that we can run on the command line that's called SCP. SCP is secure copy. SSH is secure shell. SCP is a way for us to transfer things between two different computers. So I would like to copy recursively, so the same syntax as copy with CP. I would like to recursively copy the Pokemon directory, and I'm going to copy it to fbristow@avary.cs.umanitoba.ca. And at the end of this, no spaces, I'm putting a colon character. The colon character really specifically says this is a remote host. If I don't put the colon character there, it's going to copy Pokemon to a folder that's called fbristow@avary.cs.umanitoba.ca on my local system, which is not what I want. I want to copy it to a different computer. So that colon there is not a typo. It's very intentional. I want to copy it to that remote system. I can put stuff after the colon if I want to specify a subdirectory, but I just want to copy it to my user directory on Avary. So to do that, I press Enter. It's going to ask me for my password, which I do not know. So I'm going to copy and paste my password. And what this does is it transfers the entire directory to Avary. I'm going to leave this up for just a second. Okay. So we are able now to find out how to run commands using the manual pages. We have accomplished this. We can run man and then the name of the program that we want to find things out. You should, after emailing cs support@list.umanitoba.ca, if you're not able to connect to Avary with SSH, you should be able to connect to Avary with SSH. You should also at this point be able to choose a text editor. I'm pretty confident, I believe I'm confident in saying this, that most of you will choose VS Code. That is totally okay. I will not think any less of you for choosing VS Code. But I encourage you to try using Vim. At least try it before you say that you don't like it. This is a very common phrase at supper time in my house, and it results in lots of tears, and I hope that trying Vim doesn't involve tears from you. You should be able to execute commands on the command line. You should be able to navigate around the folder structure. You should be able to create folders. You should be able to copy and change the names of files and folders. You have not been able to do these things yet. They are unchecked, and they will be unchecked in the notes that are posted to the course webpage. Next class, we will take a look at this. So tomorrow we will take a look at our first assignment, and then we will keep trucking on. So thank you all for coming out to class, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye, everyone.